In Las Vegas, your decorative grass can be ripped out by law. Your watering schedule can be dictated down to the minute. And you, a regular homeowner, can be told publicly and repeatedly to do your part, to save water. But somehow, the golf course 3 miles from your house still looks like it was airlifted from Ireland. Bright green fairways, sprinklers running, in formation. Luxury landscaping that looks like it has its own personal rain cloud. So naturally, people across southern Nevada are asking one very simple question. If we're in a water crisis, why does the rich part of town still look irrigated by God himself?
Despite unprecedented drought measures, the luxury golf courses continue to consume millions of gallons of water daily.
And that single question is why this story keeps exploding online. Because this is no longer just about drought. It's about power. It's about image. And it's about who gets told to sacrifice and who gets to keep their grass. Welcome to Las Vegas, where your lawn might literally be illegal, but a golf course is somehow still classified as a necessity. Apparently, your 12-foot patch of front yard grass is a threat to civilization. But 140 acres of luxury turf is a public service. You with a garden hose? Practically a criminal. A resort fairway with industrial sprinklers? That's economic development, baby. In Vegas, even the water crisis has VIP seating. And the more you look into this, the weirder it gets. Now, before you say, well, maybe golf courses use different water. Yes, that is part of the argument, and we're going to break that down, honestly. But even that explanation doesn't make the public anger disappear. Because the real issue here is bigger than plumbing. First, let's zoom out, because you cannot understand this fight without understanding where Las Vegas actually sits, geographically and politically. Las Vegas is one of the most water-vulnerable major metro areas in the United States. Full stop. It sits in the Mojave Desert. Average annual rainfall, about 4 inches. For context, Seattle gets nearly 9 times more rain. Even Los Angeles gets more than 3 times as much. Vegas was never supposed to support nearly 2.5 million people in the metro. But here we are. And the lifeline that makes all of this possible is one body of water, Lake Mead. Fed by the Colorado River, held back by Hoover Dam, and responsible for supplying water to roughly 25 million people across multiple states. And here's a detail most people outside the Southwest don't realize. Nevada actually gets the smallest share of Colorado River water among the lower basin states. California gets over 54%. Arizona gets about 37%. Nevada? Roughly 4%. That is not a comfortable margin when your city keeps growing and the river keeps shrinking. Over the last 2 decades, Lake Mead has become the most visible symbol of everything going wrong in the American Southwest. A 20-year megadrought, the worst in at least 1,200 years according to climate researchers. Overallocation from a century-old water compact that assumed the Colorado River carried more water than it actually does. Population growth that never really paused. And climate pressure that keeps making the math worse. So Southern Nevada didn't just start worrying about water last Tuesday. This has been a slow-moving emergency. And the region's water authority, the Southern Nevada Water Authority, or SNWA, recognized decades ago that conservation wasn't optional. It was a survival strategy. Officials promoted desert landscaping, what's called xeriscaping. Watering schedules became stricter, seasonal restrictions, day-of-week assignments, time-of-day limits. Decorative grass, the kind that just sits there looking pretty but nobody actually uses, came under direct attack. And the message to residents was made very, very clear. The desert is not supposed to look like a suburban backyard in Florida. On paper, that makes complete sense. Las Vegas is a desert city that spent decades pretending to be an oasis. And pretending is extremely expensive when your water supply is shrinking by the year. Vegas was built on many things: gambling, tourism, air conditioning, and an almost spiritual level of disrespect for geography. A desert city with dancing fountains, Olympic-sized pools, and green fairways was always going to have to answer some uncomfortable questions eventually. But here's where the politics start. The moment regular people are told to rip out grass, reduce watering, and accept a drier lifestyle, they immediately start looking around and asking one question. Okay, are the wealthy doing the same thing? And that is when golf courses enter the conversation. Over time, water conservation policy in southern Nevada got increasingly aggressive, particularly around one target: non-functional turf. Non-functional turf, decorative grass that serves no recreational purpose. Medians, office park strips, HOA common areas, roadside landscaping. Grass that exists mostly to look nice. In 2021, Nevada became the first state in America to pass a law specifically banning certain categories of non-functional turf. The law targeted roughly 31% of the grass in the Las Vegas Valley. Grass in commercial areas, HOA medians, office complexes, and street-side strips. The timeline? Remove it all by the end of 2026. And this wasn't just symbolic. The Water Authority had been running rebate programs for years, paying residents and businesses to tear out grass and replace it with desert-friendly landscaping. Billions of gallons saved, millions of square feet of grass removed. Real, measurable results. Southern Nevada actually became a national leader in urban water conservation. And here's a fact that surprises almost everyone. Las Vegas's total water consumption actually decreased over the last 2 decades, even while the population grew by hundreds of thousands of people. That is a remarkable achievement, and it happened because of real policy and real sacrifice from ordinary people. Homeowners adjusted. They converted landscaping. They accepted watering only on assigned days, only during approved hours, only in approved amounts. Many spent their own money, even with rebates, redesigning their properties. They dealt with code enforcement, water waste hotlines, neighbor complaints, HOA conflicts about what the new acceptable yard should look like. And let me be clear, most of this policy is genuinely defensible. Removing ornamental grass in a desert city facing a generational drought is smart. It works. The data supports it. But here's the emotional problem. Sacrifice feels very different when everyone appears to be sacrificing together versus when sacrifice feels selective. If ordinary residents are removing grass, paying attention to every sprinkler minute, and being publicly lectured about conservation, then seeing massive green private and semi-private spaces remain lush and untouched creates a very specific, very predictable emotional reaction. So the rules are for us, but not for them? That one sentence is why this topic detonates in every comment section it touches. It's not really about gallons of water at that point. It's about fairness. It's about who is visible in the sacrifice and who is visibly exempt from it. Nothing radicalizes a homeowner faster than being told to rip out a small front lawn while driving past a golf course that looks like it has its own personal weather system. And naturally, defenders of golf courses respond with what they consider a very important distinction. They say, "Wait, you don't understand. This isn't the same thing." So let's talk about that defense. Because honestly, this is where the story stops being simple and starts getting genuinely complicated. Not more. Golf courses, water authorities, and local officials often make several connected arguments. And here they are. Argument 1. Some golf courses in the Las Vegas Valley use reclaimed water, also called recycled water or treated effluent, rather than the potable water that comes from Lake Mead. What does that mean practically? It means that some of the water irrigating those fairways already went through someone's shower, dishwasher, or washing machine. It was collected, treated to specific standards, and then reused for irrigation instead of being discharged. The argument is, this water would not otherwise be available for residential drinking supply. It's a different category, a different pipe, a different system. Argument 2. Golf is tied to Las Vegas's tourism economy. Courses support resorts, conventions, real estate values, jobs, from groundskeepers to pro shops to hospitality workers. The argument is that shutting down or heavily restricting golf would damage an industry that brings money into the region. Argument 3. Golf courses are not totally unregulated. They may face water budgets, reporting requirements, efficiency mandates, and their own form of conservation targets. The claim is that they are being managed, just differently than residential properties. Now, let me say something clearly. These arguments are not invented from thin air. There is technical substance behind them. If a golf course is genuinely using reclaimed water that cannot practically be redirected to residential taps, water that would otherwise be discharged, then comparing it one-to-one with a homeowner spraying treated drinking water onto decorative grass is not a perfect comparison. That's a real distinction, and intellectual honesty requires acknowledging it. But here is the political problem that no technical explanation has ever solved. Most people do not experience water policy through engineering reports and infrastructure diagrams. They experience it with their eyes. And visually, the message is absolutely brutal. The average resident processes this story in about 3 seconds flat. And here's what they hear. My lawn is wasteful. Their luxury landscape is economically important. My water use is selfish. Their water use is strategic. I'm told to adapt to the desert. They're allowed to design around it. Whether those impressions are fully technically accurate or not is almost beside the point, because those impressions are devastatingly powerful. And in politics, especially water politics, perception can be more explosive than any spreadsheet ever printed. Here's the reality of public communication. Nothing, and I mean nothing, calms public anger like trying to explain recycled water infrastructure to a guy who just got told his front yard is a climate crime. Sir, I understand your frustration, but the golf course uses Type 2 reclaimed effluent, processed through a tertiary treatment. My lawn is dirt, Kevin. Technically accurate is not the same thing as emotionally convincing. This is where the story stops being about water management and becomes a story about class. Because golf courses are not just random patches of irrigated ground. They are symbols, and symbols carry weight far beyond their acreage. Golf courses symbolize leisure, exclusivity, wealth, membership culture, resort economics. And in many American cities, they are visually, almost architecturally associated with the people who are least likely to feel the daily pain of resource restrictions. So when conservation policies hit ordinary neighborhoods harder, or even just appear to hit them harder, public anger naturally flows in one direction: upward. And this pattern is not unique to Las Vegas, not even close. Across every drought-prone region in the American West, public trust collapses along the exact same fault line. The moment citizens are told to use less, while elite consumption remains visible and protected. It's the same psychology that makes private jets a lightning rod in climate debates. The same dynamic that makes mega mansion water use a scandal during California droughts. The same reason gated communities with green lawns become objects of public fury when the neighborhood across the highway is brown. The math may be complex in every one of these situations. The symbolism never is. If austerity is for the middle class, While aesthetics are preserved for the wealthy, people stop believing the system is fair and starts looking like an insult. In a drought, green grass becomes political. That is just the reality. Apparently, the desert only applies to people without clubhouse access. But here's where I want to challenge the viral narrative slightly, because I think this story deserves more than outrage. Some experts and analysts say golf courses may not actually be the biggest water villain that people imagine them to be. So, if that's true, why does this issue still generate this level of fury? Now let's ask a harder question, one that most viral posts never bother with. Are golf courses actually the primary driver of Las Vegas's water stress? The answer is not in the simplistic way that online outrage usually suggests. When you look at the Colorado River Basin as a whole, the overwhelming majority of water goes to agriculture. We're talking 70 to 80% in many estimates. Alfalfa, cotton, cattle feed, hay, crops grown across Arizona, California, and other basin states, some of which are exported internationally. Urban use, the category that includes residential, commercial, and yes, golf courses, is a significantly smaller portion of total basin consumption. Within southern Nevada specifically, golf courses use water, absolutely, but they're not single-handedly draining Lake Mead. That's a much larger, multi-state, multi-sector, multi-decade story involving over-allocation, agricultural demand, climate change reducing snowpack, and political agreements made 100 years ago based on data that turned out to be wrong. The 1922 Colorado River Compact divided water based on flow estimates from one of the wettest periods in the river's recorded history. The river was never as generous as the deal assumed. And every decade since, reality has been catching up with the math. Now, does that mean golf courses are totally innocent? No. Does that mean public frustration is irrational? Absolutely not. But it does mean that the person screaming, "Shut down every golf course and the crisis is solved," is dramatically oversimplifying the problem. And Southern Nevada's own conservation record actually complicates the simple outrage narrative too. Remember that stat from earlier? Las Vegas reduced its total water consumption while growing its population. The Water Authority has been genuinely aggressive. Rebates, turf removal, watering restrictions, return flow credits for indoor water that gets treated and sent back to Lake Mead. This return flow credit system means that water used indoors, showers, sinks, toilets, dishwashers, gets collected, treated, and returned to Lake Mead, where it essentially gets credited back to Nevada's allocation. That's why outdoor water use is so much more politically sensitive here. Outdoor water evaporates. It's consumed. It doesn't come back. Indoor water? Much of it does come back. That's a genuinely important technical point. So why, knowing all of this, do golf courses still trigger such massive public anger? Because politics is not only about the biggest source of a problem, it's about the most visible contradiction. Golf courses concentrate several things people despise into a single image: scarcity, luxury, exclusivity, and perceived exemption. That is a politically radioactive combination. Even if golf courses are not the #1 water issue, they are the single most emotionally effective symbol of unequal sacrifice. And in public discourse, symbols move opinion faster than data ever will. Water politics has one unbreakable rule: whoever looks the greenest loses the argument first. It doesn't matter if your water is reclaimed, recycled, or blessed by a hydrologist. If your grass is green and your neighbor's is gone, you are losing the public narrative. For anyone watching this from a housing or real estate perspective, this story goes even deeper than golf. Because landscaping rules don't just affect individual lawns. They shape how entire neighborhoods are designed, marketed, valued, and sold. In the American Southwest, green landscaping has traditionally signaled one thing above all else in real estate: prestige. A lush lawn meant stability. Green common areas meant a well-managed HOA. A golf course view meant wealth, leisure, and exclusivity. In real estate marketing, water has been sold as luxury for decades. But in a water-constrained future, which is no longer theoretical, it's happening right now, that entire visual language is being forced to change. Desert-friendly design is no longer just an environmental choice. It's becoming a market reality. New developments increasingly feature xeriscaping as a selling point rather than an apology. Buyers, especially younger buyers and transplants from other drought-aware states, are starting to view excessive landscaping water use as a liability, not a luxury. But this transition is not smooth, because it creates a fundamental tension. On one side, cities and water authorities want sustainable growth, reduced outdoor consumption, and the elimination of ornamental turf. On the other side, developers, resorts, HOAs, and luxury communities still understand, deeply, the market value of green. Buyers respond to beauty. Tourists respond to image. Investors respond to desirability. And in the Southwest, desirable has meant green for a very long time. Which means water policy is now on a direct collision course with property marketing. And the deeper question is this: can desert cities keep selling an oasis lifestyle while simultaneously telling their own residents to embrace desert reality? Because those two stories are running in opposite directions. And Las Vegas may be one of the first major cities where that contradiction becomes literally impossible to hide. When your government says conserve, but your economy says indulge, something eventually has to break. And right now, what's breaking is public patience. At the heart of this entire controversy, underneath the policy debates, the water tables, the reclaimed infrastructure, the economic arguments, sits one thing: trust. People are willing to make sacrifices during a crisis. That's well documented. Communities endure rationing, restrictions, lifestyle changes. They adapt. They cooperate. They do hard things. But only under one condition. They have to believe the sacrifice is shared. The moment policy appears unequal, the moment people sense that some groups are protected while others absorb the burden, cooperation starts cracking. Residents become cynical. They stop hearing conservation as a collective mission and start hearing it as top-down discipline. Conserve so the tourism industry doesn't have to change. Sacrifice so the luxury sector stays comfortable. Do your part, meaning your part specifically, not theirs. And once that framing takes hold in public consciousness, even genuinely good policy becomes almost impossible to sell. Because the policy itself might be sound, the water math might check out, the engineering might be solid. But if it looks unfair, if the optics scream inequality, none of that technical correctness matters. Because fairness is not a side issue in resource management. Fairness is the whole thing. If a city wants the public to conserve, genuinely conserve, not just comply resentfully, it has to prove, visibly and convincingly, that privilege is not being protected at everyone else's expense. Otherwise, every drought policy, every conservation campaign, every public awareness message starts sounding exactly like this: please save water so that the luxury experience remains uninterrupted. And politically, That message is pure poison. People can handle bad news. People can handle being told the situation is serious, that everyone has to cut back, that the future requires adjustment. What people cannot handle is a moral lecture delivered from behind a manicured hedge. Nothing inspires collective sacrifice like watching selective comfort. So, is Las Vegas literally handing unlimited water to golf courses while banning everyone else from touching a garden hose? No. The reality is more technical, more layered, and more complicated than that. There are different water sources, different regulatory categories, different infrastructure systems. Some of the outrage oversimplifies genuine engineering distinctions. But is the public outrage understandable? Absolutely. 100%. Because this debate was never really just about irrigation schedules or reclaimed water percentages. It reveals something much deeper about how modern cities function under pressure. In a desert city facing long-term structural water pressure, every green fairway sends a message, whether intentional or not. And to millions of people across southern Nevada and the broader Southwest, that message is devastatingly simple. There's one set of rules for ordinary residents and another set for luxury landscapes. Now, maybe officials have detailed explanations, and many of them are technically accurate. Maybe golf courses do operate under different water systems with different sources and different efficiency standards. Maybe the math is more nuanced than the anger suggests. All of that can be true. But here is what 20 years of drought politics in the American West
Has proven beyond any doubt. If your policy looks unfair, people will treat it as unfair. And in a democracy, perception becomes reality very, very fast. Las Vegas may be trying to conserve water, and in many measurable ways, it's succeeding. But in doing so, it's also exposing something that no water authority report can fix. In modern cities, scarcity doesn't just reveal environmental limits. It reveals social hierarchy. It reveals who gets told to adapt, and who gets to stay green. So, what do you think? If homeowners across Las Vegas are being pushed, by law, to rip out their grass, should golf courses and resorts face dramatically tougher public restrictions too, even if they use different water sources? Or are people ignoring the economic and technical side of this story and just reacting to optics? I genuinely want to know where you land. Drop your take in the comments, because on this particular issue, people have very strong opinions, and I want to hear yours. If you want more breakdowns like this, real estate, housing, city inequality, the weird economics of how American cities actually work, hit subscribe. And next, I think we need to cover how desert cities across the entire Southwest keep selling luxury lifestyles in places that are actively running out of water. Because Las Vegas is just the beginning of that story.